Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishana Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Nitra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutatuhe Namaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangha Padakramo Panishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Dadkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidhusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So today is literally the last session for the Bhagavad Gita shlokas of chapter 6. So we are coming to the end of the 6th chapter. We will conclude with the shlokas 46 and 47. But towards the end, it is so beautiful. So I'm actually going to share a couple of quotes from Swami Chinmayananda's book itself, because from this book, which is so beautiful, it starts with actually the last section, literally after Arjuna has had some more doubts or questions about meditation. We see Lord Krishna telling Arjuna that, don't worry about the fact that if you have done something good in this life, don't worry that it is going to be a waste, So such a powerful thing that Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, because here, in different ways, like with our own kids, we sometimes, you find them so worried about what's going to happen in the future. Should I really spend my time on this? Will this be a waste? So many different ways. But you see, Lord Krishna actually treats Arjuna as his own son, and in Shloka 40, for example, he tells him that don't worry at all. Whatever you've done is not going to be a waste. It is not going to lead to any destruction, because, especially in the context of where we are discussing about Pramodini's mother passing on, that always there is something in the future to look forward to, where you have an opportunity to continue this journey. So he says that in 40. And then in 41 to 45, he really starts to explain what happens to that jiva, when that jiva goes from one body to another. Where does that jiva in the sense which is we call as the Sukshma Sharira, which is our entire body, who we think this is his physical body, is actually not the physical body. It's only the shell, the actual components of who we are is actually in that Sukshma Sharira, or in the subtle self, which actually migrates from one body to another body. And that Sukshma Sharira, we call that as a Jiva. So Jiva can mean also this physical self, that is that Sukshma Sharira, with this shell, which is his body, but it is also that transmigrating body. So in shlokas 41 to 45 last week, we saw that path of progress of the seeker, who by whatever reason, which we know, our physical body is not going to be with us throughout. Even though we spend so much amount of time dressing this external shell, feeding the shell with all kinds of good things, what we feel. But at the end of the day, there is something called death for that body. So Krishna then assures Arjuna that there is really no destruction for the subtle body. That continues on. So only that person, and this is, the assurance that Krishna says, only that person who continuously keeps on acting the right thing, does the right thing all the time, for such a person, there is absolutely no sorrow at all, no grief, because the future, he says, is nothing actually but a product of the present. Whatever I do today, I reap in the future. It may not be apparent. Sometimes, we may not see the effect because we are part of this whole universe. And in this universe, there are so many factors that can affect us. So in all this, we may not see that whatever good I'm doing is really visible, that I'm not able to see it, but continuously I need to act upon. So that is why in today's reflection time, I wanted to give these two quotes. One is, death is not the end of an existence, which started with the accident of a birth. This is Gurudev Swami Chimayananda's quote. And it is, as much as we are discussing about Pramodini's mother here, it's such a coincidence that I have to start with these quotes today. This is just a pure coincidence, but it is again to assure us that it is not the end for all of us. And so too, our birth is not an accident, but here he's trying to say, we think our birth is an accident, that only, how come this person was born in this family, or how within a family, one person is, such a genius and the other person is not a genius, all these questions come to us, right? But here he's saying that the existence of this jiva in this physical body, okay, is, Gurudev uses this beautiful quote. He says, it is like this pearl in this necklace. It's like one of the pearl in this necklace of infinite beauty, which is adorning the bosom of truth. That is how he says, and that's how we have to look at our life. So ultimately, there is nothing but this absolute truth, this absolute reality, okay? But I'm unable to see that reality. So how do I recognize that reality? Yeah.
How do you connect that with the pearl of necklace? I'm trying to understand the...
No, so ultimately, we are all connected. So later on, in fact, there is this beautiful phrase, Sutre Mani Gana Iva, basically the sutra, the thing that connects each one of our lives, if you want to look at it that way, is nothing but this thread of consciousness. Okay. So this thread of consciousness in which each one of our lives, I've gone through so many lives, and each one of these lives can be looked upon as a pearl, and each of these pearls are held together by this beautiful thread of consciousness. It's that consciousness that is holding the pearls. I look at the pearls and I get attracted by it, but I need to go beyond the pearl, so that is what he's trying to say.
No, you said if one pearl is gone, something you were telling me.
No, basically, yeah. So just because one pearl is gone doesn't mean that existence is over. Okay, so that's the only thing I wanted to mention about it. The pearl just represents a life of of my continuous lives. Each one of my life is like a pearl, that way I was tying it.
Okay.
So for us, we believe, that this present, what the present life that I'm seeing is, which I'm experiencing, is actually nothing but this product of the past. Every thought, every action that I'm doing today, okay, it contributes to who I am the next moment. So thought by thought, action by action, knowledge by knowledge, in every action which is propelled by a thought, when I'm acting with the right way of thinking, what I'm doing is, or for that matter, even wrong way of thinking, in connection with this shloka here, we are creating for ourselves a blueprint of our own future. So this is, in the shlokas 41 to 45, you see these profound thoughts coming across. And so that is why I wanted to put this. And that is exactly why we have in our own Hindu Sanatana Dharma, we believe in this reincarnation. So what Krishna, ultimately, the bottom line that Krishna is trying to say here is that ultimately nobody is ever lost. We may be making a lot of mistakes and we seem to be falling, but that fall is nothing but something which is helping us move ahead. It's just a slight fall. And then I pick up my steps and I move forward, So it's our philosophy is so optimistic. It gives a lot of power to each one of us. And you see that in this shloka 40, actually, where he says, "Na kalyana kaschit," how can anybody go anywhere? You are there in your own self. You're rooted in your own self. So that's the point. So anybody wants to share anything, any other shloka which strikes them? Okay.
I have
So
in the previous slide, Sunitha ji.
Yeah.
Previous slide, you said whatever the thoughts, action by action, knowledge by knowledge, everything is blueprint for the next thing.
Correct.
So isn't the current one blueprint of the previous one?
100%. 100%.
So what control do we have to change it? Do we have what to say?
The
liberty,
power of choice.
Liberty.
Actually, what we have control is the power of choice. In every thought, every action, I have an opportunity to exercise. The thing that is given to us is this power of choosing something. Okay. And that is the only thing that controls it. So
the power is also driven by thought, action, and from blueprint, right?
So the thought, action, all these are actually, if you think about it, they are jada. Jada indicating that there is, they're inert, What powers this? I mean, literally think about it as, now, in an accident, what do we say? We say, oh, the car got involved in the accident. Did the car actually who got that car into an accident? The car is an inert material, but it is the power of choice that that driver exercised. The driver could have gone faster, or the driver could have been exercising caution. So the power was in the driver. So too here, every thought, every action by itself is inert. Okay, but what powers is that is the power of choice.
Blueprint.
Yeah. No, the blueprint is the effect. Finally, it is the effect. So who I am today is a reflection of all my past actions. Okay. How I lived my life, how I chose to live from the time when I was born to now. I had a choice on my time, on how I wanted to spend, And that leads to the final blueprint.
Okay. So that blueprint in turn helps us to form the next life.
That's right. That's right.
So it keeps going from one to another. So what power do we have? You said the power is that. Power is that.
No,
one
we have the power of choice. We have the power of choice. You know, our intellect. Basically, if you look at that intellect powers the mind then acts according to the intellect. If the intellect is not powering the mind will do how it has been conditioned to do, you know. So we have this package of vasanas or package of samskaras. We say samskaras are what we have come from the past, and vasanas are our likes and dislikes. So the mind is always sort of conditioned by that. You know, let's take the same example of the car. If the car has been always used to being driven very fast and very in a reckless manner, then what happens is it may escape the police or it may escape something 1 or 2 days, but ultimately it is going to face its prarabdha of the car, you know, because it has been driven in a certain way. So too, this mind, if you don't allow it to be under the control of the intellect, like last week, Amlan, you know, he showed that Ratha, that chariot, you know. So you see that 5 senses, and you know, you see that the mind, which is in this case, I think he was, I'm not mistaken how, I'm not sure how he showed, but the mind is driving the senses. But the mind is also conditioned by the vasanas. It has to be always under the control of the intellect so that the mind can get rid of the vasanas or is not under the influence of the vasanas. So that is where the power of choice is. The power of choice is, do I listen to my intellect or do I not listen to my intellect? If I don't listen to my intellect, then automatically the mind will go. The mind is used to doing things. You don't have to do anything at all. But I have to constantly allow that higher self in me, the higher intellect, to constantly be guiding. And it is because of the intellect that I'm always alert, you know. Anytime, and we can see this in our lives, the second when I'm not alert, the mind will go. We are in an autopilot mode. And sometimes it can lead us to a danger zone also. So I have to be alert.
Yeah, like we have a choice today. We could have gone to a party or class. So it's us. So we make those choices in our lives. Just so that is the change we can do in our. That's the whatever karma is there. But now we have the knowledge what is right and wrong, what is dharma. So we can put our foot down and say, no, we'll follow dharma. No matter.
So your intellect is acting. So in that situation, so your intellect is acting, right? Intellect says, go for this and not for this, right?
Yeah.
So that intellect is the power. Is that what you are saying, Sunitha?
Yes, the intellect is the, you can
power.
Say, no, so intellect also, you look at it as, think about it as, the intellect is also powered by the consciousness, but intellect is the equipment. Intellect is the boss. Look at it as intellect is the boss, which is directing the right thing to be done. So everything is powered ultimately by that consciousness principle. That much we have to remember. Okay. But
now
then
in this situation, in this example, how does this blueprint come into? Where does the blueprint act? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Correct. So the point is, like in US, let me.
No, same situation. Same situation.
Correct.
Maybe if intellect didn't play a role, we would have gone to a party, perhaps.
So the blueprint is being created by a combination of the action of the mind, either driven by the intellect or not driven by the intellect. So the combination of those is making the blueprint of myself for the future.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both of them. Both of them.
Hmm.
That is why we are born as a human being also, so a human being is a product of all the good things he has done, plus all the things that he could have done. I don't want to say bad things, but all the things. So the combination of this is why I've been given such a superior a shell, like this human body,
Hmm.
where my intellect is actually available for me for reaction. If you look at something like an animal, right? An animal is totally driven by its instinct, by its mind. Okay. Now, one may say, does that mean that the animal doesn't have any vasanas or something? The animal also may have vasanas, but they are in a form which is in a kind of a dormant state. So it is just living the life of an animal, what it is supposed to do. It doesn't, either act or react. Maybe it reacts, actually. It does react, actually, it reacts, but it doesn't act. Whereas we as human beings, we have the potential to act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I took away so much of your time.
No, that I'm glad it invoked some thought process there, But again, all these things in that just the shlokas 40 to 45, I wanted to summarize it in just those two shlokas, which will help us to move along, So I'll just, like last week, chant the shlokas from 30, and then we just dwell a little bit on 40, and then we move on to 40, those two shlokas. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Ath Shashtodhyayah Yo Mam Pashyati Sarvatra Sarvam Cha Mai Pashyati Tasyaham Na Pranashyami Sacha Me Na Pranashyati Sarvabhutastitam Yo Mam Ajatyekatvam Sarvatha Vartamanopi Sayogi Mai Vartate Atmaupamyena Sarvatra Samam Pashyati Yorjuna Sukham Vayadi Va Dukkham Sayogi Paramo Mataha Arjuna Uvacha Yoyam Yogastvaya Proktaha Samyena Madhusudana Etasyaham na pranashyami chanchalatvat sthitim stiram chanchalam himana krishna pramathi balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram Shri Bhagavan uvacha asamshayam mahabaho manodur nigraham chalam Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena cha gृह्यते asam yatatmana yogaha dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayataha. Arjuna uvacha ayati shraddhayo petaha yogaschalita manasaha aprapya yoga samsiddhim kam gatim krishna gacchati kaschinno bhaya vidbhrashtaha chinnadbramiva nashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanapati Etan samshayam Krishna chetumarhasya sheshatah tvadanya samshayasyasya chetana hyupapadhyate. Shri Bhagavan uvacha parthanaiveha mutra vinashastasya vidhyate nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati. So this is the one where I was saying, where Krishna is saying that there is absolutely no sorrow at all for that person, who continuously exercises his power of choice to do good. So he says, Nahi kalyana krit kaschite durgatim tat gachati. There is absolutely no sorrow. That person will be joyful. That person will be happy. The only thing we have to recognize is Krishna is not telling that means that all the time this person is going to be in a la-la land, everything is going to go good. That's not what Krishna is saying. What Krishna is saying is that mentally you're going to become so strong that even small things do not disturb you or make you extremely happy, because your mind is pitched to a higher goal, something which gives you like extreme happiness. That part of it is where Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, So that's why the shloka 40 is so good. And then 41, Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati samaha shuchinam shrimatam gehe yoga prashto bhijayate. So from here on, he explains about how the person who has done a lot of good, what happens after death. So that's what he's bringing here. Where is he born? What does he do? And then, he says he's either born in a family of prosperous and cultured people. That means somebody who is very wealthy and who has great values. Or the possibility is, he says he will be born in a family of yogis who are very evolved people. In fact, they won't be very wealthy or anything, but they have just their goals is only reaching that moksha. So in shloka 42, Athava yoginam eva kule bhavati dhimatam etat vidurlabhataram loke janma yadidrisham. So he says, such a person is born as a child of a jnani. And in this shloka, he also kind of gives this thing, about how or this is just something that I thought, we don't have to worry about the fact that somebody lost their life very quickly or whatever, because we don't know what prarabdha that body has come with, right? So there is always a next time. That is why I wanted to put this here. So in shloka 43, he says, Tatratam buddhi sanyogam labhate paurvadehikam yatate chatato bhuyaha samsiddhau kurunandana. So he says, the person who is born in this family of yogis, because of the fact that in his previous birth, this person spent so much of time studying the Shastras, understanding that knowledge. So when he's born in this family of jnanis, in such a family, he actually gets, he not remembers from the way we think we remember, but to say that he continues in the path where he allows himself to be in knowledge, so that is why he says, Tatra tam buddhi sanyogam. He becomes united with that knowledge which he had acquired in his former body. So nothing goes for a waste. Everything is taken into account. We don't need a physical bank where I'm looking to see, okay, I did so much of punyam, let me go back and check my bank passbook or my account to see how much of punyam have I got, how much did I lose, nothing. Everything is recorded. And that recording is really saved in this subtle body that we have, which migrates from one body to another. So he says, this paurvadehikam, which he had acquired in the previous body, and tam buddhi sanyogam labhate. It gets immediately, as soon as a person is born, literally. So that's why Shankaracharya and all that, Bhagwan Shankaracharya, even as he was born, even when he was 5 years old or 6 or 7, he had already written the bhashya for the Vishnu Sahasranama. How does that happen? Because he gets united with the knowledge that was there in him when he passed away in his previous birth. Literally, I think Shankaracharya probably took birth so that he can write these bhashyas and everything. and be there as a beacon light for all of us, So that's what he's trying to show here. And I just put this quote last time. We didn't get too much of time to discuss, but where ultimately a child comes to a set of parents, not because the parents wanted the child chooses the parent. A birth never gives birth only to the body of the child, but ultimately the child comes with its own aspirations, with its own ambitions, if you want to say. Anything that the child wanted to do, that is already decided and that is taken care of. And the child just wanted to express itself. So, it's like, again, I want to use an example of a car. If the car didn't have a steering wheel, and if the car didn't have the lights, and if the car didn't have whatever it gives the speed, again, I'm using the car because you're in Motor City. If you didn't have the shell, how would that car even travel, right? So too, the mother is responsible to provide that jiva, that whole physical structure by which that child will then express itself in the world. Because otherwise that subtle body doesn't have any expression, doesn't have hands or legs or anything to express itself. So that's the idea behind here. So then Shloka 44, Purvabhyasena tenaiva kriyate hyavashopi saha jijñasurapi yogasya shabda brahmati vartate. So it's a continuation of the previous shloka where, he's trying to say that this child which is born in such a great family of yogis. So there were two instances he gives. The previous instance was the child who has some amount of vasana, vasana to do something in the material world. He's born in a family of a nice, wealthy family where he's literally born with a silver spoon in his mouth, so to speak. That was discussed in Shloka 42. But 43 and 44, he talks about this child which is born in this great family of yogis, where the whole family is so focused only on knowledge and wanting to evolve. The whole thing is about moksha, as I said. So this extension of the Shloka 43, he's saying that verily by that very form of practice, and that is why I use the word blueprint and everything before, because you have already created the blueprint. So he's born in spite of himself and in that great family. And then, he says, even he who merely wishes to know yoga, that is somebody who just wants to know about meditation, somebody who's asking questions about, what is this life about? Why am I born here? All that. He's just giving that. He goes beyond Shabda Brahman. Shabda Brahman indicating, now, when we think about what is Brahman, who is Brahman, everything, we come to literally a concept which cannot be explained by any of our powers of speech. We cannot do that. So the only way we can think about Brahman is by the very first word, which is the Omkara, right? The word Om is the first manifestation of that absolute Brahman. So by this word of Om, we understand Om signifies Brahman. So here he's trying to say that somebody who wants to really understand himself, and even he who merely wishes to know yoga, that person goes even beyond Om. So, we can, at the end of the day, understand what is Om, but even to go beyond that is what the Shloka 44 is trying to say. So that is the whole thing which happens with the power of grace. And we taught, last week we discussed about this whole human birth itself is so rare, and having had this human birth, how do we use it? We use it to really understand even more about the fact that I'm not this physical body. That is why this whole human birth has been given. No other no other being can really go there. So the success of a spiritual knowledge is to remind ourselves that we need to go beyond this Shabda Brahman or the finite world. So in that sense, I was trying to show that how for all of us who have taken a human birth, this is very much applicable to us. So then in shloka number 45, now we, he's talking about Prayat. Look at this book and chant because I find it a little difficult to chant with that. Okay. Prayatnadyatamaanastu yogi samshuddha kilpishaha. Prayatnadyatamaanastu yogi samshuddha kilpishaha. Aneka janma samsiddhau. Aneka janma samsiddhau. Yat Aneka janma samsiddhi. Tato yati param gatim. Aneka janma samsiddhi. Tato yati param gatim. So here he's trying to say, but how, this yogi who has purified from sins, who is totally, who doesn't have any of these vasanas, and he has really perfected himself. So he ultimately reaches that highest goal. So this is why I put this thing about to show that it's like a spiral path towards realization. So ultimately he goes to the top or moksha itself, where through each birth, so each of these floors, if you want, you can look at as a birth. After every birth, he is actually going higher and higher and higher, ultimately to reach that ultimate state of Brahman. So, having talked about all this, now literally everything has been explained about meditation. So Lord Krishna now, he wants to leave us with these two shlokas where he's trying to bring out the importance of where this finally leads to. So he is going to, talk about actually the three kinds of people, three kinds of seekers. He wants to show us about how karma yoga, so karma yoga is one way by which I have an opportunity to get rid of my own likes and dislikes. Okay, so where I'm performing my duty without really thinking about that I do this only because I like this, I don't like it, I don't like it, so I will not even go there. So that is one way of perfecting ourselves, one way of improvement. So that he talks about that. Then he talks about another type of people who are great upasakas, who through rituals and everything who are totally devoted to God. And then the third type is the jnanis, the people who are jnani in the sense people who are only knowledge seekers. So he talks about these three people, and then finally he says, who is the best of the people, or who is the best meditator? That's where he goes to. So last week we saw this, Tat Tvam Asi. By this chapter, we are finishing all the aspects of Tvam, or you, that you are, that's the translation. So Tvam, part of it, we discussed. And for this Tvam, a lot of the way what we saw was the path of action was discussed. And finally, we are going into now understanding what Tat means. So Tat is basically that absolute self, which for us, it is going to be difficult to totally say that, okay, now I understand who I am. I can even understand that I'm not this shell and I'm the subtle body. To that extent, I am able to understand up to the 6 chapters. Now, in Tat, what is Tat? Tat is actually that absolute reality. Like I said, Brahman, consciousness. for which we cannot even try to understand with our with the five senses, with our mind, intellect. None of those we'll be able to really understand. So this first in this chapters which is coming up, you understand about Tat as Ishvara. Ishvara, that is that Brahman in the form of Saguna Brahman is how we look at it. Saguna means with attributes. So that is the way we can really understand who this Ishvara is, right? So that part of it is going to come up in this shlokas. So in 46, he will first describe about those three type of meditators, which I said, the karma yogi, the the person who does upasana, and the person who this, and then he tells Arjuna, I'm just explaining this to you, but you need to go even beyond that. So we chant the shloka. Tapasvibhyodhiko yogi, tapasvibhyodhiko yogi, jnanibhyo pi matodhikaha, jnanibhyopi matodhikaha, karmabhyashadiko yogi, karmabhyashadiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna, tapasvibhyodhiko yogi, jnanibhyopi matodhikaha, karmabhyashadiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So here he's saying the three types of people, tapasvibhyaha, adhikaha, so even greater than somebody who does a lot of tapas. Tapasvibhyaha adhikaha yogi. Yogi indicating the meditator. Okay, so that meditator, he's saying, is greater than even tapasvi. Jnanibhya api. So he's even greater than somebody who is a great person of knowledge. And he says, in my opinion, so very humbly, Lord Krishna is saying, this is in my opinion, this meditator is even greater than karmabhyaha, which is a person who is a karmi, or a person who does things in a selfless way. So a person with selfless action, a person of austerity, and a person who is a man of knowledge. So that is the three things he's trying to show here. So karmi yogi is one who works selflessly. A tapasvi is a person who denies things for himself or herself. A jnani is somebody who is constantly in the field of knowledge. So basically, this whole thing, he says, in all these people do this thinking that they can reach that state of infinite bliss, or reach that state of Brahman. But he says that may be true. Like, sometimes people say, oh, somebody like Einstein who's working in the lab, so focused only in what he does, even that person reaches that state. He says, no, that is not true. It is that person, that meditator, who actually is able to completely divorce himself from this equipments, what he has, which is, the person who can be beyond the body, the person who can be beyond his mind, the person who can be beyond his intellect. So only such a person can be that absolute meditator. So again, showing that, how, what level he takes this whole idea of meditation. So finally, in shloka 47, he tells him that ultimately the one thing that you really need to practice is this path of meditation. That is the only way you can actually reach that higher state, that state where you can actually see yourself and all and everyone in yourself. These shlokas will come up very soon in chapter 9 and everything. But he finally says that is the only way you can actually go further on. And he tells him, ultimately who's the best and the greatest of this meditator, and how meditation is ultimately the only state which will take you forward. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yo mam Same yuktatamo mataha. So he says, even among the yogis, even this one, the one who is completely madgatena, one who is completely absorbed in me, by what equipments? Completely, where the mind and the intellect, everything is totally absorbed in me, and with Shraddhavan bhajate yoma, the one who practices, who worships me. Bhajate means the one who is constantly chanting that name of the Lord, and we'll see the word bhajate again coming up here. The one who constantly worships, such a person is, in my opinion, connecting to the previous shloka, he says he's the one who is the ultimate. So meditation should be the one which is the ultimate here. So again, just to review on how we have reviewed meditation. Meditation for us in the beginning, like we talked about, is basically something we do with what should I say, as a deliberate act. We do this to bring our mind to a focus, correct? So this focus can be in the beginning on, say, any object, a physical object, a murti, or something which is in front of me, So this is how, by me focusing on that murti, I allow my mind, number one, to focus. But that is the thing. So, but the second thing is, I also use different, various kinds of processes to persuade this mind from going somewhere else, not from going. So I use methods like japa, or I use some other methods of maybe singing the name of the Lord. So many different ways I use different processes. And then I also can change this object. So in the beginning, I can have a physical deity in front of me. Then later on, I can even change the various deities. Or let's say, even before coming to this object, I can even focus my mind on a particular work or something, which is also kind of an object. From there on, I come to, that Ishvara, and I focus on God of, various types, various kinds of gods. We have so many gods on whom we can meditate. So based on that, and also different processes, we allow this mind to really come to focus. But ultimately, he says, the idea is not that deliberate act, but that act, which you can't even say it's an act, because there is actually no action. So that ultimate state of meditation is where my entire self is completely merged with that absolute self. So what does that mean? That can happen only when I am totally surrendered myself. Surrendering myself means what? Again, myself, because I think about myself as Sunitha with this physical body and everything. But at that higher state, I'm not Sunitha, I'm not this person who thinks, I'm not this role I play, nothing. Where I'm totally merged with that absolute self. It's like, when the river goes to join the ocean, is there any difference in the water which is part of the river or part of the ocean? No difference. It's that total merge. It's that state is that highest level of meditation. So that is what he's trying to say, that that's where we need to get to. So he, in the next chapter, he will actually talk so much more about that self now. So far I can understand, maybe I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect and all that. But what is that ultimate self? So for that, he says, ultimately, this can happen only when I do this word, when I do this bhajana. So bhajana, can mean so many different things, right? So especially when you're in India, you can hear bhajana happening in the temples with lots of instruments, with all these, things, what do you call that? And Gita probably knows this because you do a lot of bhajana, that, what do you call that? Symbols, right? So all that can be used for the word bhajana. But here he's trying to say that, bhajana means it is that act of total surrender of my ego, of myself, where I pour out with complete dedication to that ultimate state, where I'm merging. So that is really the word bhajana. And so this Krishna says is my opinion. So ultimately the concluding message from this is that can happen only when I recognize that Ishvara, I develop that devotion and I get myself connected to that ultimate state. So this shloka, what we saw, the shloka 47, is the sort of teaser or an appetizer for the 7th chapter. So 7th chapter, we will be actually discussing about that tat in the form of Ishvara. So who is that Ishvara? Who is that ultimate God? Why should I get merged with that God? So really such high level sentiments, when we think about it, the kind of life we lead, the mundane life, Ishvara doesn't even come into play at all, right? But how do I bring that Ishvara? I can only bring that Ishvara when I describe the greatness, the glory of the Ishvara. Like, for example, when we tell a child, you have to be like Sundar Pichai or Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs is no more, so that's why we use Sundar Pichai or any other examples, then I have to first glorify who Sundar Pichai is, how did he get where he got to? What does he control? How big is his Google? Or, all that needs to be first described for the child. Only then the child is going to say, okay, you know what, you're right. I need to go towards that. So that is where the 7th chapter will start. So we'll conclude with this shloka, which is, and we'll, let me say the meaning first, and then I will, we'll conclude with the shloka itself. So he says, Om Tat Sat. So what is Tat Sat? Tat Sat is actually, we call this as a Sankalpa Vakya, Sankalpa phrase, which is trying to say, this is, I accept. So basically, it refers to Brahman, Tat, that is, as I said earlier. So Tat Sat refers to, it's a phrase to recognize Brahman. Tat Sat iti, this Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So this Srimad Bhagavad Gita is nothing but Upanishad, Upanishadsu. So it is actually the 7th Vibhakti, actually, so he's saying this is nothing but that Upanishad itself and Brahma Vidyayam. So what does Upanishad talk about? It talks about the Vidya with the absolute knowledge of Brahman, and it is Yoga Shastra. So it is that absolute Shastra which talks about that union of everything, so Yoga Shastra. And what is Shastra? So in Shastra, there is it can be in Sanskrit, it is broken as Shasti Itam Upadishati, which means that, it is, or Shasanat Shastram. Shasanam means the governance, which is, and ruling means Shasanam. So that which gives you the instructions of do's and don'ts. So Bhagavad Gita, by itself doesn't say do that or don't do that, but it tells you by what is good for you. That is why Shastra, it says hitam, what is good for you and what is not good for you. That is what it says. And Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvada. Samvada basically means that which is, it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And Atma Sanyama Yogo Nama Shashtodhyaya. Atma Sanyama Yoga, which means that which is about the yoga of the mind, yoga of the of meditation. So that is which is what he's trying to say. Shashtodhyaya, which is the 6th chapter. So it is the yoga of self-abidance. So that finishes the chapter. Next week, we will chant the whole chapter, and we will also summarize the 6th chapter, and we will also summarize it in the context of all the 6 chapters, and we will start with the 7th chapter. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.